discussion around strategic management. And today's focus is on strategy implementation. By the end of the session, you need to be able to define what is strategy implementation. Also, be able to explain the importance of strategic management for organizational success. And also, you need to be able to identify various steps and challenges that are involved in strategic implementation. Now, when you talk about strategy implementation, is the stage where the strategies that we have formulated are now put into action. So we want to see the practical aspect of what maybe we have in paper in terms of strategies. So we will first begin by setting what we call annual objectives, then develop policies around those objectives, motivate employees, and also allocate resources for us to be able now to put these strategies into action. And developing a strategy supportive culture, organizational structure, marketing adjustments, part of the very critical components of this particular stage in terms of implementation. So we need the people around us to support what we intend to do in terms of implementation. We expect that the organization structure is going to work on our favor. Everybody within the structure should be able to support the implementation aspect, and that will be key in terms of realizing that this particular strategy has been implemented. Now, once we do implementation, it is going to be important because of a number of things. The first one is any company success is going to depend on the sound strategy formulation and excellent implementation. So for us to say that we are succeeding in terms of strategy implementation, then we need to have gotten it right in terms of formulation, in terms of excellent implementation. And implementation also involves designing the organizational structures. Through it, we can now be able to allocate resources. Through it, we can be able to manage our information systems. And through strategy implementation, then it becomes very important because we are going to be able to manage our human resources. And then also we need to implement, we are saying the aspect of implementing any strategy is very challenging, and it could be even more difficult than the formulation steps that we have taken. So we need to be very keen, ensure that we are doing everything right, ensure that we try to get everything right based on the strategies that we formulated. Now, when it comes to strategy implementation, we are faced with a number of challenges. And of course, these challenges are going to hinder us from the ability to implement the strategies, or they are going to hinder us from taking action in terms of what you have said is another meaning of implementation. So these challenges will include the aligning of organization structure, culture, and resources with the strategy. Of course, once we set strategies, it could put us in a situation as an healthcare organization on where we now need to have enough resources. We now need to align our plans with the organization culture. So when we are not able to make these particular adjustments, then it means it's going to be very difficult in terms of implementing the strategy. Another challenge is communicating the strategy effectively. Remember, for us, for the implementation step to be able to happen, then we have to very well communicate to everybody that is involved. Now, if we do not communicate effectively, if we do not reach out to everyone, that's when you find within the healthcare uh, organizations experiencing what we call resistance. People are going to be saying no, maybe to a particular change. Maybe we want to change our organization activities, how we do things. So the aspect of communication is key. So it becomes a challenge when we don't effectively communicate to all the parties involved. They need to be aware that now it is the moment for implementation so that they can be able to provide support. But when we don't do it, it becomes a major challenge in terms of implementation. The other one is managing change and uncertainty that accompany strategic initiatives. Remember, when you are implementing plans, we are headed to a direction that maybe we have not experienced something of that nature. We are headed to a direction that we cannot ascertain exactly what is going to happen when we implement. It is just taking a step of faith. So a challenge comes because of that, the uncertainty nature of what we are implementing. We may not really tell and foresee the end result unless we are practically doing it. And then also it's very challenging in terms of monitoring and evaluation the progress and performance of the strategy and making necessary adjustments. Yeah, so it is a major challenge in terms of looking at the progress. Sometimes we would look at the progress and get discouraged because it's not working our way. It's not going as we had planned. Other challenges would include the need to balance between our short-term goals and long-term goals of each strategy. And also other challenges would be strategies that are not implemented to serve a particular purpose. Now, success in strategy implementation. For us to be able to succeed, there are a number of things that we have to observe as healthcare organizations. Number one, we need to have interpersonal skills within ourselves and within healthcare employees. And interpersonal skills will mean that people can be able to relate well with each other because we need that synergy for the strategy to be able to work. We need unity among the employees. We need people that are working towards the same direction so that we could be able to realize success in terms of implementation. And we're also saying success is also going to rely on personal discipline, commitment, and the ability to motivate employees. So, are employees committed? Are you able to motivate them enough? Remember, when we talk about motivating employees, we could talk about monetary way of motivating them. We could talk about non-monetary way of motivating them. So it is you to depend. If it is you to decide on which particular method you are going to adapt for motivation. Part of motivation would also involve you involving the employees in every step of the strategy implementation, and this is going to make them feel part and parcel of the strategy. And around organizational departments, they must also decide on how to implement their part of the organization strategies, and they need to. There is a major effort in terms of collaboration and enthusiasm. Now, how do we manage the aspect of conflict? Because it is likely to happen within our activities. So interdependency of objectives and limited resources often could lead to conflict. So when we are implementing, we could have challenges around lack of resources or limited resources. This is going to pose a major challenge to people, those that are implementing the project. It could be a reason or an opportunity for them to have conflicts amongst themselves. Conflicts is also going to arise because of different expectations of those that are involved, including all the stakeholders. Conflict will also happen in terms of the schedules, the work schedules. Maybe when you are implementing a new strategy, the work schedules become even tighter. People have to sacrifice hours to make sure that it works. And of course, personality differences within the project. So some of the ways that we can adopt to manage this conflict is what we call avoidance. So we could all together try and do away with this conflict if possible. We could also use the diffusion method, or we could confront whatever issue that is contributing to conflict. When it comes to strategy formulation and strategy implementation, we want to understand what is the difference. And we are saying formulation is going to focus on positioning forces before action, while implementation is going to focus on managing forces during the action. So when you're also doing formulation, we are all about prioritizing effectiveness. While when you are implementing now, it's the question of how are we going to be efficient so that we can be able to succeed. And the other one is formulation is intellectual, whereas implementation is operational. So when we are formulating these strategies, it's more about our minds being put into action. That's why we are saying it is intellectual. But when we are implementing, then we are operationalizing what we thought about and maybe put it in writing. And finally, formulation requires intuitive and analytical skills, while implementation needs motivation and leadership skills. So for us to be able to put the strategies into action in terms of implementation, then we need a driving force within the people so that it can be able to work. A number of strategies across different organizations. Strategy formulation concepts are going to apply broadly, but implementation is going to always vary across organizations. So how organizations implement their strategies will always be different. And we are saying implementation actions may include changes in sales. Maybe we want to change our sales activities. We want to restructure our departments. We want to change the facilities that we are using. Maybe we are moving to a more advanced technology as a healthcare organization. Implementation will also include changing in price. And you can imagine if you are implementing a strategy that will require an increase in price. The reason why we were saying we do not know about the outcome or the future thing is because we may not really know how clients and customers, patients are going to respond to increase in prices. Implementation will also involve around budgeting and information systems, which are going to be varying depending with the industry. Now, a number of issues are very key or central when it comes to strategy implementation. We have, for example, the need for us as healthcare organizations to establish objectives. We could also devise various policies. We could also allocate resources where possible. And where possible, also, we need to do what we call restructuring. Other issues that are central to strategy implementation or are very key, there is the need to align managers with strategy and creating strategy supportive culture. So we need to have people that are able to understand these strategies. And once they understand these strategies, we need also to have it embraced across the entire healthcare organization. So we need to build a culture, a different way of doing things, so that whatever we are implementing would be able to work. And then managers and employees should participate in strategy implementation decisions. That's very important. And also their commitment is a motivational force. So once they are committed, that alone is something to be able to push them to realize the strategies that have been set. Now, in terms of key concepts in strategy implementation, we could be having, number one, what we call annual objectives. And when we have annual objectives, they are going to be guiding our action. They are going to evaluate our managers, monitor progress, and establish relationships. So when we have annual objectives, we get to have what we could call evaluation matrix. We could be able to know what is the criteria that we are going to evaluate our managers, what is the criteria that we are going to evaluate our employees, what is the criteria that we are going to use to monitor the progress of our strategy implementation, and so on and so forth. And then also well conceived, measurable, and very clear objectives are going to increase the likelihood of success. So we need to know what we can do so that can be able to work. And then also another key concept is the purpose of annual objectives. Why do we need them? Why do we need annual objectives? Number one, they are going to help us give us a guideline for action, directing efforts, and they are going to be legitimizing the activities that we are doing. So annual objectives are very key for every organization. And then also they are going to set standards of performance. We are going to have what we call a yardstick, or ways that we can measure performance. And those ways are going to be based on the annual objectives that we develop as organizations. And then also we need to motivate employees within our healthcare system and organizations. And also, I said, where possible, we can provide incentives. Incentives are just ways of motivating employees and staff to be able to push the agenda of strategy implementation. And I did say it's not always that incentives are in form of cash. We could have incentives in terms of praise and recognition of healthcare workers and employees in the healthcare organization. We could have incentives in the name of involving them in every step of implementation. And where possible and when resources allow, we could also encompass financial incentives so that we can motivate employees. Challenges and pitfalls of objectives. We could have challenges around overemphasis on achieving objectives that can lead to an undesirable conduct. Managers must or need to be alert to certain problems, such as manipulating numbers and also letting objectives become end in themselves. So even if we are implementing objectives, then they should not carry us that now everything in the organization has stopped, because maybe a part of the organization is in the implementation section. Remember, we can also develop departmental strategies and implement them within a particular department. So when we make them become the end in themselves, then it means they have become everything. Now everything has stopped because Department X is implementing a particular strategy, and that should not be the way to go about it. Every other activity within the organization, even if we are doing implementation, should still continue because we are also looking at the overall goal of the organization. Other concepts in strategy implementation is the aspect of policies, on the need for us to come up with policies that are going to help us in day-to-day activities. Remember, policies are simply guidelines around our organizations, healthcare organizations, and so on and so forth. So when we have these policies, then we are able to guide behavior. We are able to set boundaries. We are able to clarify expectations, and so on and so forth. And also, when we have these policies, then we can reduce decision making time, because we already sat down and put them as major guidelines within the organization. We could be able to promote delegation and provide a basis for management control. And also, in terms of resource allocation, when it comes to strategy implementation, then the aspect of resource allocation cannot be avoided. We have just been talking about the aspects of motivation, part of which is going to involve resource allocation. So when we are doing strategic management, it is going to enable us to prioritize resource allocation, and we will be guided by what we call the annual objectives. Now, once we have effective resource allocation and combined with other programs, personnel, controls, and commitment, the organization is going to definitely succeed in matters strategy implementation. So we need to be very keen in terms of resource distribution. And remember, when we are talking about resources, we are talking about the personnel or the human resource that we have. We are talking about the financial resources that we have. We are talking about how we manage our time as we continue to implement these resources. So each and every resource is important, and it's going to now dictate how, as healthcare organizations, we are going to succeed in implementation. Now, in relation to impact of structure on objectives, what is going to happen? We are saying that an organization structure will always influence how objectives are set. And some of the examples of objectives under different structures could be the cascading effect of strategy implementation activities, and how is that going to impact the structure on resource allocation. So role of structure in resource allocation is going to be very, very key. And through coming up with a structure for implementation, then we are able to align strategies and resources together to be able to reach that point where we are moving together and we can succeed. We have what we call strategy driven structure. This is a structure that is designed to facilitate strategy pursuit, the mission's role in shaping the structure, and also the alignment of structure with strategy for effective implementation. So it is key for us to design a structure that is going to enable us implement our strategies without struggling. Now, we have the general framework that we are going to be adopting, or we can adopt for strategy implementation. We could have what we call the 6 principal administrative tasks for successful implementation. The first one is the need for all healthcare organizations and organizations to build an organization that is capable of executing the strategy. And once we do this, what we are going to benefit is, or the importance of that is, we will now be able to match skills and responsibilities with the strategy. So individuals and people that are good at something within our procedures of implementation, we could place them in particular areas where we will expect them to thrive as we implement a strategy, and also assign responsibilities effectively. Task 2 is the need for us to establish a strategy supportive budget, and we are going to do that by ensuring resources are available for strategic objectives. We are going also to do that by identifying tasks, decisions, and plans for resource allocation. That is going to be very, very important. And also, in the third item, we can install internal administrative support systems. So within the organization, we need support systems. And the part of the reason on why we need these internal systems is to assist us to do strategy execution. And also, they are going to be key in terms of policies and administrative processes. The fourth one is devising rewards and incentives, motivating people and departments to accomplish the strategy. So it is bound to the management of the organization, to the other stakeholders within the organization, to have a discussion around how can we reward and how can we have incentives. Remember, these are going to push people to be able to participate in strategy implementation. So where possible, if the organization has the ability to do that, then there could be a consideration in terms of rewards and incentives. And then also we need to align the rewards and constraints with strategic goals. The other task is we need to build a strategy supportive corporate culture. When we are building a strategy supportive corporate culture, we are building a supportive environment that builds around having values, beliefs, and business principles that are going to be guiding us. And we are saying when we have this supportive culture, then we are going to succeed in strategy execution and be able to also succeed in strategy implementation. Now, what is the general framework for strategy implementation? Where does corporate culture come from? So we need to understand the origins of corporate culture and get to know that it's very vital to have corporate culture. We need to have a defined way of doing things as a corporate, and this is going to originate from various sources. We could look at past management practices or current management practices. How have we been doing things? How have we been working with other strategies, if any? How have we undertaken our previous strategy implementation activities? We could also be guided by our ethical standards. We could also look at stakeholder relationships. We could also look at our traditions. We could also look at employee attitude. What is the attitude of employees towards the strategies that we have proposed to implement? So that is going to be very key for the success of the implementation. Risks of a strategy culture conflict, a mismatch between strategy and culture is going to pose a major significant risk. So we need to, once we get to know that there are risks that are going to arise, then we need to develop risk mitigation strategies so that we do not find ourselves where a conflict has arose between the strategy that we are implementing and the culture of the organization. Task 6, we need also to focus on leadership and strategy implementation. Remember, leadership is very, very important. So any leader is going to play multiple roles in various processes and activities, and leadership styles in strategy implementation, we could adopt a number of them. We could adopt what we call authoritarian. That is also what we call dictatorial kind of leadership. We could also adopt a participative approach, or what we call a democratic approach. We could also adopt what we call coaching, and each of it is going to have a place in strategic management. It depends on the target or what we want to achieve based on a particular leadership style that we choose. We are also going to focus on looking at strategy and reward systems. And we are saying when we have motivated employees, this is key in terms of enhancing strategy implementation. And the reward systems, including intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, are very powerful motivators. So incentive, we need to have incentives pay plans we can develop depending on discussions that the organizations, healthcare organizations have held. Of course, we cannot just from the blues decide this is the amount that we are going to be paying as incentives. There must be long and lengthy conversations around that. And once we do that, we are now pushing the implementers of this strategy to a way new level where they are going to own the strategy, and also they are going to enjoy and be part and parcel of implementation. And then very importantly is on the aspects of budgeting for strategy implementation. And we are saying budgeting is going to specify the resources needed to achieve organizational objectives. Through budgeting, we are going also to be able to measure the successful accomplishments of objectives within a specified period. Conditions that are going to be very effective for budgeting include we need to have a very strong senior management commitment. So the management has to come in handy and commit in terms of supporting through various budgets that would be presented for implementation. Also, we need to align our business objectives and the strategies that we have set. And very importantly, we will also need to include regular reviews and explanations of variances or shortcomings or things that we have not been able to meet. And variances always come in handy when you are doing monitoring and evaluation. We could be noticing some shortcomings that we need to work on. So once we notice them, those variants, then we could have the opportunity to be able to improve. And that is going to bring us to the end of this particular discussion on strategy implementation. I invite you also to do more research around this area. Remember, we have been doing a build-up of discussions, where to this point now we are talking about implementation. So I wish you well, and thank you so much.